Alright guys, this is a video on how to swap a 250 motor into your CH125 or CH150. My bike here is a 1984 125 and I have a 85 250 in the bike. So this video will go step by step on how to do this swap, what you need to cut, what you need to modify, what you need to do. And overall, I'd say the swap is not too difficult. It takes maybe a week to do. A week of downtime. You'll have to order one piece of hose, but everything else, if you buy a parts bike of a 250, you'll have. So this video starts with me testing out how to do the swap on this parts bike frame. I wanted to tear into it and get it fitted and see what I had to order before I took apart my daily. And so you see all that. I'm going to give you a rundown here of basically everything you'll need real quick. But if you do want to do the swap, I would recommend you watch this video in its entirety because it is the entirety of me doing the swap on my bike. Alright, so the number one thing you're going to need is a CH250 motor. I would recommend going with a parts bike. I found a CH250 parts bike for 250 Canadian dollars, running and driving, had I think 14,000 kilometers on it. The parts you're going to need from it are the motor itself, carburetor, rear shocks, the rear wheel and all that kind of stuff, exhaust, and I think mud flap if you want to keep that. And I think that's it for now. Doesn't hurt to have spares. You'll buy a parts bike, you'll have 100 extra bolts that you can put on your bike if you have any bolts missing, and you'll also have a spare CDI or a spare ignition, anything like that. Most of these parts are interchangeable throughout the models. So the first step you're going to do is you're going to cut off your center stand. This is to make space for the motor because the motor itself is a lot bigger. Then you're going to have to trim a little bit off the bottom of the motor. There's a oil line that's being protected by some aluminum. You're going to have to cut that off. You're going to have to cut a little bit off the head. There's a fin on top of the head, again protecting an oil line. You're going to cut that off so it has space to clear on the top. You're going to need to do some new coolant hoses. I have the size in the description that you need. I think it's 5/8. Carburetor, you're going to keep the stock 250 carburetor on it. The Airbox is from the 125. It fits. You're going to need to make a little piece of a bracket. Mudguard is on there. Coolant system is all the stock 125 stuff. It doesn't overheat. It's been good to me. Another thing you're going to have to cut, you're going to have to cut a little bit of the CVT case. Leave it open, fresh air. It doesn't hurt nobody because it has this funky CH250 air intake. It's all filtered air. It's a mess. And you're going to have to trim that up. Then you can fit the 250. I did not have to trim any of my plastics. I only weigh 195 pounds, so I have not bottomed it out here potentially, but so far it's been clear here. There is aftermarket exhausts, and those aftermarket exhausts will definitely lower that down, so then you won't have to trim the plastics at all if you weigh heavier or maybe you're two people. I have one on the way, and I plan to make a video in the future of 1,000 kilometers of riding, and by that time I'll hopefully have that exhaust on there. The only other thing you're going to really need to do, you're going to need to space this battery up, trim a little bit of the battery box because it rubs. Wiring is pretty much all plug and play. In the video I go over what wires you're going to have to do, but not really that difficult. I'd say if you have a running and driving CH250 and a decent shape 125, maybe with some motor problems, you can swap it in pretty easy. I wouldn't recommend doing it if you have electrical problems or anything like that because they'll just transfer over to the new bike. So get your 125 or 150 sorted first and then go in with it. The reason for the swap for me was my 125 motor was leaking an insane amount of oil and coolant out the head. There's no aftermarket, there's no original parts available for this anymore. It had 26,000 kilometers I think on it. It was still running and driving good, but my exhaust had all snapped off, all the mounts for it had snapped off, so it was just loose, always loose, making a racket. My motor mount, very loose. It was kind of wobbly sometimes, but if you have a running and driving bike, I would not recommend doing with this swap. I would say if you have some kind of internal engine problems, I would maybe recommend doing the swap. The speed increase is nice, but there is some drawbacks. Now, I can think of a couple of drawbacks. Number one being you're missing your center stand. It's kind of annoying because the scooter does roll on itself. You're gonna need to use the parking brake pretty much anytime you park it just to be safe. The kickstand is definitely a little bit too short for this new stance. The rear shock is much taller. You can extend the kickstand as some people have done, weld an inch or two in the middle, but I haven't done that yet. I plan to weld the center stand back onto the bottom in a different spot because I just liked it that much. Now, I'd say one of the other drawbacks is you do use quite a bit more fuel. I'd say about 25% more. I used to get about 225 kilometers on a tank on my 125 motor. Now I got about 160, I think, on the 250. The 125 motor I definitely was abusing. I would be wide open throttle the entire time. Now I don't have to do that so much, but it still does use quite a bit more fuel. One of the other drawbacks is the vibrations. So since it's twice as big of a piston, it shakes a lot more. There's less of a motor mount. The 250 and the Helix have a pretty substantial motor mount compared to this, where it's basically just one bolt and then the shocks. So at idle, it does vibrate quite a bit. You can sort of tune it out with the carburetor by either increasing or decreasing the idle speed to sort of stop the shakes. But for me, it hasn't really been too big of a problem. I do think some bolts have rattled loose. I did lose this bolt here because it just kind of rattled itself out. But at speeds, there's no dangerous wobbles or anything like that. I got to a speed of 110 kilometers an hour with this completely rotten tire in the back. I have a new tire already here, and I plan to change that when I get my exhaust gaskets for the exhaust, because my exhaust has a exhaust leak. You can also do this swap with a Helix. I have seen a Facebook post where someone used a Helix motor. For me, I found a CH250 parts bike more readily accessible, but I could have probably also done it with a Helix. The motor itself is pretty much identical. The exhaust mounts a little bit different, and I think the suspension is slightly different. The CH250, there's no cutting or welding you have to do with the suspension. On the Facebook post that I have in the description, someone used a Helix motor and they had to space the two shocks apart, I believe, because this mount down here on the Helix is different because the whole exhaust system is different. The Helix did come out for like 20 years, I believe. So there is a lot more of them than the 250s. So you could go that route. But I do think the good outweighs the bad. There are so many positives to this swap. Not only just the speed increase, but the aftermarket support is substantial compared to the 125s or 150s. You can get an aftermarket exhaust on eBay. There are actual head kits. There are transmission kits, new parts, everything new. And the performance is definitely better. My 125 motor got me around the city. I live in Toronto. Got me around the city quite well, but with two people, it definitely was a little slow. And now commuting to school, I had to go on some 80 roads, and I definitely felt the lack of power on those roads. This new swap, I have felt way more comfortable on those kinds of roads, but I do also miss some of those drawbacks I mentioned. I'd say if you're like me and you have another bike potentially to ride, then this swap might be for you. I would say you have to be kind of crazy about these scooters to want to be able to do this swap. For me, I have had 4 Honda Elites. I have a Dio still, and I just like fixing them. I like doing stuff to them. That's not to say I don't think this will be reliable, but there is definitely a couple more things to go wrong with. But if your motor is shot and you want aftermarket support, or you just want an increase in speed, you want to do something fun to your scooter, I would definitely recommend doing it. These scooters are meant to be ridden, and if you can keep them on the road for longer, do it. I wouldn't tear apart a fantastic, perfect, pristine 125 or even a 250, but if you find a ratted out parts bike and no title with it, then absolutely put that in your 125 or 150. I do warn you that there is quite a lot more power, so my bike does wheelies if I accelerate too hard. My 125, you would be lucky to get the front wheel up when you're going off a curb. It is so underpowered. Now, all this torque is ridiculous. I'd compare the torque to a 70 kit on a Dio, a two-stroke scooter. Once the weather is in the spring, I'll hopefully be able to race them. But I'd say off the line, they're probably neck and neck until this one pulls away, because it has just more high-end torque and more top speed. So I've put some timestamps in the description of sections of the video. I've also got the link to the hoses and any other parts you'll have to buy. In the 1,000 kilometer update video, I'll answer any questions that someone maybe put in the comments, but before then, I'll definitely make sure to type out a reply. You can also send me a message on Facebook, and I'll send you a reply if you need anything. Without further ado, here's the first clip, and enjoy. Just kind of slowly tearing it apart. Got airbox off, gas tank, a lot of parts over there. Look at the dirty carburetor. It's filthy. Everything on this bike is filthy. Okay, so I'm doing a little test fit with the mock frame. I did one cut here with just a regular angle grinder. I'm gonna do basically the same on the other side, and then I'm gonna go across here at the bottom and hope it fits. I'm trying to keep this kickstand piece intact because I want to maybe try to weld it down here so that I still have a center stand. That's my plan. Let you know how it goes. Okay, so this is the cut I did. I have basically removed it. It was pretty easy with the angle grinder. There we go. About like that from the side. I have the frame like this just because I wanted it to be comfortable. It's going to be a little bit more difficult once I do it on the bike. Make sure you guys wear your safety glasses. I had so many sparks flying, it was crazy, but it literally took 5 minutes. Okay, so it's installed now. Put the shocks on. Looks pretty good from the back. It's straight. Looks, well, it's crooked on camera here. Gonna straighten it to the camera. There we go. That's good. Yeah, it looks good. It's really close here. I think it's actually maybe touching in there. So I think I do need to shave a little bit more off there. Okay, so this is the wire that you have to replace when doing the swap. It's the starter solenoid wire or something like that, starter relay wire. This goes from here to the relay, and on the 125, the relay is up by the battery. On the 250, the relay is down here by the battery. So the cable itself, this is it, I believe. No, this is the ground. This is the cable. So this is the cable that it had on it, and it's only going this far. On the 125, it needs to go all the way to the top. So on Facebook, they say you got to make your own cable, this and that. I thought, why not just use the stock one? So I took the cable off my parts bike, and sure enough, they bolt right up. And then here's the ground. This one goes between your legs above that carb access hatch, and then this one will go up to the battery and connect to the solenoid. And that's all the wiring that has to be replaced for this swap. Everything else is plug and play. These are for the ignition system, the stator and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, I think all these are basically the same thing. That's it. So now the only thing that has to be swapped over, oops, the only thing you have to buy new is some coolant hoses. The factory ones are, I think, 1/2 inch on the 125, and then on the 250 they're 3/4. So what I did, I ordered a 5/8 on Amazon. Okay, I just did a deep clean on the engine. It's not perfect, but it's at least not super oily. it seems to be leaking oil from here, which I'm assuming is going from like the stator or something like that. Some kind of internal mechanism out. A little bit of oil there, not a big deal. This was really full of dirt, so I have all that out. I gotta clean it still. Make sure you, I would definitely at least take the CVT off to make sure you don't have any catastrophic damage in there before you put it on. I'm gonna refresh the whole CVT, but I just want to get the motor in, started running. Make sure you have oil. That's about it. Tire shot, but got it out to dry. Shouldn't have any problems cleaning a motor like this. I've done it before in my 125 and didn't have any problems. Make sure you dry it before you install it. There's the clutch all clean and ready to go on the bike. Okay, let's test fit of the coolant. This is just regular 5/8 inch coolant hose. Fits snug on the 250 and pretty snug on the 125 stock stuff. So I think 5/8 is the ideal diameter. I'll put a link in the description of the video. For the exact one I bought, it comes with some hose clamps too, because I'd rather use those than the stock ones that it came with. This is it on the 125 stuff. So this is where it was, this is smaller in the 125 than on the 250, so that's why we had to switch it. Once I get this piece cut out, I'm gonna put, I'll tell you guys the measurements exactly so that you can just cut that out of this hose and then do that. So this is the carburetor from the 250. It's super grimy. Got an ultrasonic cleaner, some pine sol, and that'll clean it right up. Okay, the next step is we're gonna have to remove this cover for this oil line because it needs a bit more clearance on the frame. Checked out some Facebook videos and it's pretty important to do that. I'm gonna use probably an angle grinder for this stretch here because there's a bit more clearance. This one's a little tight to this line and I don't want to cut it, so I'm gonna use my Dremel. Okay, so I'm basically through it. Just gonna crack it off. Should be able to. Oh yeah, easy peasy. So that's about as much as I took off. I might shave that down a little bit. Okay, I just used the Dremel, cleaned it up a bunch. I put a towel here so I didn't make a mess because there's dust everywhere. That's how it looks now. People on Facebook, they had way more shaved off. I'm gonna see if this fits on the parts bike. If it does have enough clearance, then I'll leave it. If not, I'm gonna have to shave off more before I put it into the actual bike. All right, so motor is mounted. I had to grind this little tab here on the top of the 250 motor. I had to grind it flat. Ignore that. Wow, terrific. Because it was getting really close to the petcock. Okay, so I'm currently having a bit of a problem. It appears my starter, positive terminal on the starter is hitting the motor mount. Yeah, so it's definitely hitting the starter here. If I move the frame up, it hits. And then you can see the rubber's torn, so we're gonna have to move that. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna rotate the post so that it comes out the bottom. So it's completely out of the way. So I took the starter out, it wasn't hard, 8 mil there. Now I'm gonna take these Phillips off and then hopefully I'll just be able to rotate it. Okay, so this is how I rotated it. It's gonna go on like this and come out the bottom. So the starter is mounted. Don't forget the ground from here. For me, this works the best without shortening the wires, and I know it'll come up in a good spot on the frame. Second bolt, so this one's to hold the post into the starter, and then this one's to hold the terminal on. I flipped this so that it had a little bit more clearance, but just make sure that you have everything tight. Just to make sure that it still starts, we're going to do a little test run with a battery. Just connect negative to positive, positive to negative. We're going to touch it, see if it spins. Oop. That sounds good, so that means we're set. All right, so now we have a lot of room with this motor mount. Working on the coolant lines. I have it through here and it looks like it should fit, and then I'm gonna put this going up basically like that to the motor. This one is gonna come around. I'm gonna put those on and give you guys the measurements in a second. Okay, so this is how I have the coolant hoses ran. This one is going here, and it needs to have a bit of slack in it because when the suspension goes down, this goes further back. So my measurement might be a centimeter too short. I still have this much left over, so I might decide on putting a new one in, but I'll put the measurement on screen now for this one. This one is going through the stock hole down here, connecting here. It's loose right now. It's a little bit difficult to slip on, but I'm kind of coming in at a bad angle because I have this wood block here. If you have the bike suspended in the air, you'll be able to do that much easier. Coming through and up here, I'm probably going to put a zip tie so that it stays over this way more, and then connecting to the top there. Other than that, it's pretty good. There's no more interference here at the starter, and it looks pretty clear. Right, so this is how I have my scooter hooked up in my garage. Got some ratchet straps going to the ceiling, and you just need it suspended a little bit off the ground. I don't know, that's maybe 2-3 inches. Basically what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take all the mounts off. Make sure you disconnect all the wires and stuff first. Coolant, it's probably going to make a mess. And then we're going to go suspension and then the motor mounts. And then, so that's why I'm taking it off. It's pretty sturdy like this. This is enough off the ground that the 250 will fit because the 250 is a little higher up. So I just have it hooked up to here, some ratchet straps, going to some hooks on the ceiling. Works pretty good. Okay, so down here is the only wires you need to remove. The only ones you need to unplug. It's this, as you can see, mine's like super oily because I got like a crazy oil leak out the head. There's these two here, and then this one and the little small one. And I think that's it. I don't know where this one goes, but I don't think it goes. Oh no, this one plugs to the oil, or no, temperature switch, I think. This is the temperature. So it's those ones. So those are the only ones you need to do. Don't worry about any of the voltage regulator, the CDI, anything like that. Those can all just sit to the side. These guys here are all pretty much good. There is the starter solenoid somewhere here, this one, which is that orange wire, which for you guys doing the swap, I would keep that on, and then what you're gonna have to do is take the ground off the 250 and keep your ground going down here, this one. So it's this orange one and this green one, and leave those down here and connect them to it when it's on the bike. So basically once you put the 250 in, use these wires because these are the longer ones. These are the ones you're going to want to use. So I would leave it up here plugged in, the voltage, or sorry, the starter solenoid, and keep that running down here. I might actually do the same just because it's probably a little easier than running this wire. It's kind of tucked away pretty nice. So I'm going to undo the ground and the starter on the 250 and use the wires that are pre-existing from the 125 or the 150. The thing you can't forget is the brake cable. So we're going to use the one from the 125 or the 150 and put it onto the 250. It fits right up. I also put this rear mudguard flap thing up so that it's out of the way because you're going to slide the motor back. And when I was doing the motor on that, I definitely had problems with it. It was kind of tight. So we're going to put that out of the way. Next step is we're going to put some wood underneath it and then remove the suspension now that everything's disconnected. Oh, gotta get the spark plug. Now everything's disconnected. Okay, so I've removed the airbox and the carburetor just to give us lots of space. You can see here I got like crazy leak out the head. Okay, motor is out. I don't know why the scooter tilted, but handlebar, whatever, who cares. Check out my motor mount. This thing is destroyed. A lot of play. That's completely blown out, so I'm going to use the one that I had from the parts bike. Would not be a bad thing to change if you're here. You can find them on eBay, and it's gonna help keep the rigidity of the scooter together. But yeah, that was not hard to take out. So next step is we're gonna angle grind that off and make space for the 250. I'm cutting the bracket off. I'm going in here, and then from the top I'm coming like this, and I've gotten this far, just a little bit left. It's pretty easy. It's not too hard with it mounted from the ceiling. It's cut off pretty easy. I used the grinder and made it a little smoother, and then I used the wire wheel and cleaned it up a little bit. I added a little bit here, sort of above, because it was close there to, like, I don't know what that is, the water pump, maybe something like that. It was just really close, so I just put a little bit just to be safe. I'm gonna hit this with some black spray paint and let it dry, and then put the coolant lines, and then put the motor in. Okay, so these are the hoses mounted up. The short one's 10.5 inches, the long one is 23 inches. Make sure the hose clamps are super tight, because this hose is definitely too large for the fittings, so you really need to make sure it's on there. You can test it, wiggle it, pull it, twist it, and if it doesn't come loose, then you're good. I have the hose clamps already on there, so you don't forget, because otherwise you're going to connect it, you're going to take it off again, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get it on. So put them on now, and put a little bit of spray paint there, and now basically the motor's going to go in. All right, so motor is mounted. I had to grind this little tab here on the top of the 250 motor. I had to grind it flat. Ignore that. Wow, terrific. Because it was getting really close to the petcock. I'm still probably going to put a spacer underneath all the tabs of the gas tank, just to raise it up maybe a centimeter, just to make sure it really has clearance. But I think it's all good. I also shaved more off down at the bottom, because I'll show you on this frame. The oil line was basically touching. I don't know, it wasn't touching on this one when I had it in, but I think some frames maybe just are tweaked a little bit. This one's definitely got, this one had like 5 times the amount of kilometers as this frame. So I grinded this here basically flush with this, and then I bent this tab in more so that it had even more space here. I would recommend doing that when you're grinding. I put the motor in and then I had to take it out because I realized it was too close. So just this top one needs to be really flush. So I went down here and then around, and then I cut these welds off, and then I made it super flat and flush. Now there's probably like 2 millimeters of space, but that sounds about right from what other people have done with this swap. And then over here you'll see I made a bit more space for that whatever that is housing here by bending this tab more forward. Okay, so I'm working on the carburetor right now. We have one cable on the 125 and the 150s, so I switched the bracket out from the two cable 251 to the one cable 151. It is going on the bottom, so that way when you open it, it opens it fully. So this is how you should have the carburetor hooked up. Now I'm going to plug it in and plumb it up with the hoses and then go for the first start. Okay, so everything is connected. I had to switch around. These are the bi-starter. From the bi-starter, one of them's the temperature, I believe, which is the one with the line in it. I think this one's the temperature, yeah, with the teal line. The connectors were wrong. Some of them were male, some of them were female. Some of them are still the original ones, but some of them I had to change. That's all I've changed. Everything else plugged in. There's this extra wire. I don't know where it goes to, but there's nothing here on the 125, and I don't know where it came from on the 250, so I'm just gonna leave it. I have the carburetor hooked up with the coolant hose, and then some of you 125 guys don't have the coolant on the carburetor, so you don't know where it goes. So here is the temperature one. This comes from the bi-starter harness temperature switch. This is the coolant hose, and then this connector down here on the other side of the coolant hose is gonna go to the long one that's coming from the front and under the floor. And then that's about it. Okay, we're putting a new spark plug in. This is the same spark plug as the 125 used, so I had a couple spares. DPR 7EA9. Other than that, I'm pretty much hooked up everywhere. I don't know how the airbox situation is going to work. That's going to be a problem for later, but we're going to just fire it up right now. Got the gas tank lines all ran. I'm going to have to plug in the coil, and then we'll be done. Okay, so we have everything plugged in. I did a couple cranks to see if fuel was flowing, everything was flowing. Carb should have fuel in it. Yeah. We're running. Okay, so I don't know if you heard, but in that startup, my exhaust was pretty loud. So I have that exhaust manifold leak. I should have ordered one a long time ago, but I kind of was just being lazy and put it off. It'll still run and ride, but it's gonna be sounding pretty crap from the exhaust. So I went on Partzilla, got the part number. This is the part number for that manifold, for that exhaust gasket. So I called my local dealer. It's $5. I have 7 of them shipped to my door so that I always have some spares. Made sure I got the free shipping. And then I'll be able to put that in and properly tune it. I'll probably still be able to ride it like this, but it'll just be loud and annoying. I will still ride it just to make sure everything's clearanced and everything like that. Once I get that carburetor on, I'm gonna go for a test spin. Okay, so everything's mounted nicely, electrical's tucked away. This side stand is hitting this. I did see that on the Facebook, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim this out and I'm just gonna leave that circle there for the intake. This is irrelevant because this is going to that crazy intake on the 250. So I'm gonna trim it basically like this around and just have that circle. Okay, so I cut this off. This is all it needs. Don't try to go down here. It's not worth it. I kind of messed up the cut. So just follow along straight. And I'm gonna clean this up with the grinder, then make it smooth and flat and then paint it, but probably not yet. This side was pretty close, but now it's very well clearanced. And on this side, it still is pretty close. So I might have to, yeah, see that's gonna be a problem here. So I'll probably have to trim the bottom of this a little bit. I'm gonna see what other people have done with it. But it could also be that the exhaust, or that this doesn't actually go any higher than this because the motor mount's here. I'm gonna test it and see, and I'll let you guys know. But other than that, it's good to go on a test ride. Okay, so if I remember correctly, fill up the radiator, and at some point the thermostat in the motor will open, causing coolant to circulate in the motor. And then this will go down, and then you'll top it up, and then you'll be good from there. I have definitely an exhaust leak. It's coming out. I see smoke coming out. Coolant is still below operating temp, so I don't think it's over yet. But we're running and driving. Yeah, you're tripping. Okay, so I have to cut the battery tray to make space for the carburetor. You gotta make space enough so the throttle cable and then the top of the carburetor can get through. So this is what I did here. I'm probably gonna trim this up a little bit more further up. And this is how much I did from the bottom. I'm probably gonna put some kind of spacer in there, something on the bottom of the battery, just to keep the battery off. Because now that so maybe like a centimeter of space so that the battery is not on top of the carburetor either. All right, so this is looking pretty good. We got lots of space with the cable, and at the back we have space. Seat closes fine. And I'll show you what I have in there. So I have these little plastic washers that I found. Oh, that one disappeared. About a centimeter tall. And that's got enough space, and it's perfect. Some super glue and glued those little spacers in there. Glue them to the box so that if I ever switch the battery, then I can keep those spacers there. Now this is going in. This is the final. So I went a little bit higher up here, about like that, and down there. All right, I just rode about 15 kilometers. Did pretty good. Airbox is still on. I'm gonna make a mount for that, but otherwise ran pretty good. Alright, just rode to school. It was about 25 kilometers. It was good. Definitely a lot faster on the 70 roads, 80 roads. It feels a little safer. I wonder if I'm burning more gas. I think the gas gauge is going down quicker. Alright, so Airbox is mounted very nicely. Bent that piece of metal. It's really close up here, and it's just clear on the shock. When you sit on it, it goes further back basically, so it won't be in the way when it's rolling. I have the coil mounted in the same spot, and it should clear the side panel. There's a little tiny bit of rubbing, but I'm probably just going to let that self-clearance. I'm going to clean this up when I have the chance. When I get new, I have new roller weights coming and a new belt, so when I take that off, I'm going to clean it up and give it a good polish. Now on the other side, the exhaust. This is the exhaust side. I have one of my spare plastics on, and sitting on it, jumping on it, could not get the exhaust to hit the plastic. I have seen on Facebook people have trimmed it here. I ordered an aftermarket exhaust just to be safe. It's an eBay one. It was kind of expensive, but I had a spare muffler from a different project, so I'm gonna use that. It was like 170 bucks, which is a lot, but it was about the same if I wanted to get something custom fabricated. It's gonna go down here and it's gonna be lower, and it's definitely gonna be out of the way. But honestly, I'm not sure if this is going to be in the way. I'm going to mount the plastic and I'm going to give it a ride and really jump on it and see. But so far, so good. I mean, definitely with heavier people or maybe two up, it might get in the way, and you might just have to trim a little bit with the stock exhaust on the CH250. But you can always go aftermarket and get, because the Helix exhausts will mount to the motor. Otherwise, I haven't had any problems with coolant or anything like that. Carburetor is still good. There's a little bit of a bog somewhere in the power band, but I'm thinking it's more transmission feeling like. This coolant hose down here has not been a problem, because when you sit on it again, it rotates this way. It rotates down, so it gets away from there. And yeah, that's about it. I reached the top of my speedo, so 110 kilometers. It's a very old tire. I have a new tire coming before I do real top speed runs, full tuck, but that was sitting comfortably upright and it got to 110. Right, so the mud flap at the rear, I had to do some trimming on it because the new shocks, well, the old shocks are at a different angle than on the old frame. I want to keep this because I intend to ride it in the rain. I ride my scooter everywhere. So that means the bracket for my air filter had to come off, and then I'm going to put this one over top of it. So when you build this bracket, make sure you have enough space around this side for this piece of plastic, because that's where it mounts, unless you don't intend to run the air filter, which in that case you don't have to worry about this. For both of these bolts here, make sure you use one of these. They have a little bit of a bevel. It's the same ones that come out of the floor. So when you get a parts bike, make sure you keep all those bolts, because I find they come in super handy, having some high quality original Honda bolts. The plastic has a little bit of an extra large circle in it, so you want to use that to keep it in place. And also then it has a wider thing at the top, so you don't have to use a washer. So that's the mud flap on. Okay, so I had to trim this off the mud flap because it was hitting the bottom of the plastic, but no big deal. Dremel cut it off. Now I'm going to go for a test ride with these plastics on. Especially curious on this side with the stock exhaust if it's going to hit onto the untrimmed plastic. I just rode 15 kilometers in the rain, did good. Tires slipped a couple times at the green light. When I floored it, I gave it gas, it slipped. But other than that, I rode pretty good. Soaking wet, but it rode very nicely in the rain. Alright, so I just filled up gas. I did about 160 kilometers on the tank with the new 250. I don't think I filled it up all the way. I probably could have gotten like 170, but I used to get about 200 kilometers on my 125. 200 to 220 on a tank on the 125 motor. But that was also riding wide open throttle everywhere. So now I don't have to go wide open throttle, but I still do. So it probably will go down once I stop going so much wide open throttle, but the gas mileage definitely took a hit. Alright, so that's been the video on swapping a CH250 motor into a 125 frame and a 150. If you have any questions, leave a comment. I will definitely send a reply. If you have any other questions, you can send me a message on Facebook. I am in pretty much all the Facebook groups for Honda scooters, so you'll be able to send me a request and I'll see it. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll answer them, and then I'll also answer them in the 1,000 kilometer update video. So if anybody wants to see that, it'll come out in the spring. But since then, happy riding and enjoy your scooters, guys.